Well, just the other day on Facebook Marketplace, a 5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton motor with electric start popped up for 35 bucks. And it looked like it had the tank set up just like this one. It even had the plastic cap, which made me think it was the newest series, which would have been perfect. And it was only about 25-minute drive from here. The listing was 29 minutes old when I messaged the guy, and he got back to me and said it's already sold. But he told me, he said, well, if the guy doesn't show up, it's yours. And I said, okay. I said, let me know. I said, I can even come and get it tonight, because it was in the afternoon. And I figured the guy was picking it up in the afternoon, and if it was still there by that evening, I was going to go get it. And I never heard back from the guy, but that evening he marked it sold. So obviously somebody saw that listing, jumped on it immediately, and ran right out there and bought that thing. That's just how hot a commodity these stupid tanks are for these high 5 horsepower Briggs motors that they're using on go-karts. So I got to figure out what the heck I'm going to do here. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and grind this seam and see if I can pop this tank in half. If I can pop this tank in half, maybe I can clean out the inside, and maybe I can weld in a new metal cup underneath here. As crazy as that sounds. I've never heard of anybody else doing that successfully, but you know, what the heck? I got no other choice. It's alright how bad that is. So I'm not seeing a seam. Oh, maybe right there there's a seam popping through. I mean, the million-dollar question is just how is this made? So it looks like what they do is this top piece has a flange, and then this bottom piece has a wide piece of metal that sticks out like this. They stick this down on there, and then they fold this over onto it. So this metal right here that's lifting up originally I think was part of this bottom piece, and I think the metal underneath there is going to be the flange. So if I continue to work my way around, take this off completely, I think it might come in half. Well, that's even worse inside than I thought. Ah, interesting. Oh, so after a liberal soaking in the parts cleaner and some scrubbing with some brushes, this is what I ended up with. So this extra crusty layer in here, I figured if I really wanted to, I could take a cup style wire wheel and just go to town with this thing, and after spending quite a bit of time I might be able to get the bulk of that off, but I'm never going to get it clean enough where I'm going to feel comfortable that it's not going to constantly have little tiny pieces flake off, get sucked up into the carburetor and clog it. Not to mention the top is really bad. So this cup, which is critical to the proper operation of this type of carburetor, it's got a big hole rotted through. It's paper thin on this side, it's rotted through. So my original plan was going to be that if I could get this clean enough, that I would break this out and I would TIG weld in a little metal cup, something similar to this. Okay? And then when I saw how lousy this was and that it doesn't look like it's going to clean up, I kind of like was really disheartened. And then a motor with what looked like possibly the right tank on it popped up in near Boston. So over an hour drive, and the guy wanted $60 for it, I think. And I was like, oh, God, they're just getting so much money for these stupid tanks on eBay for a good used one. And then the problem is there's no guarantee it's going to be exactly the right fit, right? So I was actually contemplating whether or not I want to drive out with my tank to that guy in Boston. And then he marked it pending. So I was like, oh, well, okay, I guess that one's out anyways. And then as luck would have it, out of the blue today, this came up. Facebook Marketplace. Guy actually had 2 Briggs motors. A 8 horsepower with the conventional plastic tank, gravity feed into a bowl, float bowl carburetor, and this one. This 5 horsepower quiet power with the cast iron bore. Yada yada yada. Similar setup as far as the linkage goes, where you got a choke lever and then a run, idle, run, fast, whatever. And I'm looking at it in the photograph and I'm thinking to myself, this looks like it might be the right tank. And he had this thing listed for $25 as a non-running motor. And you know, a lot of people might think, well, yeah, it's a junk 5 horsepower motor. Well, why would you want to pay? Well, because of this tank, that's why. So I contacted him immediately and I said, hey, do you still have the 5 horsepower? I'd be interested. He said yes. So I messaged him back. I said, could you tell me how good the tank looks inside? Does it look pretty clean? He said, let me go check. Came back to me and he said, it looks really clean inside. I said, great. I said, I'm going to come out. I said, well, I talked to him. At that point, we exchanged phone numbers and I said, hey, if you don't mind, I'm looking for a tank. I think that's the right tank. I'd gladly pay you your $25 if it's the right one. What I'd like to do is come out. This guy's an hour away. Come out with my old tank, and if it matches up, I'll gladly give you the $25 for it. He said, sure. So I hopped right in my car, dropped everything I was doing, drove an hour to get there, brought my tank, looked at it, was satisfied. It looks like it matches. This bracket looks like a match for the bracket that's under there. Size-wise, it looks right. Everything looks good. So I got this for $25. I'm really happy. Inside the tank, it doesn't have the foam thingamadoodle in there, that foam stuff, which actually is good because it lets you actually see down into the tank. So look how clean that is down in there. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, I tell you. Now, not that I really care because I'm not going to use this motor, because this motor's actually got a pulley on it. So it was, whatever this was running was a belt drive. I don't know what. Kind of neat. It has a chrome air filter here. But I was just curious, well, what was going on with this motor. And if you pull it, it has a really bad rattle. And again, don't care. I want that tank. I'll probably just not end up using my Chinese cheap carburetor I bought off of eBay. I'll probably end up using this carburetor too. Because of the carburetor, judging from the tank, I would say the carburetor is probably in pretty good shape too. Well, we've got rain moving in soon, but I wanted to take some time and get this gas tank and carburetor assembly off of my donor motor here, and came off pretty easily, and it looks like it's in great shape. in order to get to that, I had to take this muffler off. I haven't decided yet whether or not I'm going to reuse this muffler on my machine or not. I don't even know if I can. I think on my machine, it's got a funky muffler where it's almost like a trombone shaped pipe. I don't know, I'm going by memory. I'll have to refresh my memory. That's an interesting muffler only because I noticed on the side of this, on the recoil over here, they're calling this the 5 horsepower quiet power. So I'm wondering whether or not this might not be a quieter muffler than the one that I have on there now. The industrial commercial engine cast iron bore. So another thing, when I originally was looking at this, I thought maybe there was something wrong with this engine because I couldn't rotate it backwards, and I now realize it's because of the recoil, starter recoil. So if I pull this rope out, I can back it off. So that being said, I pulled the plug. It does seem to have compression, and I already checked, and it's got good spark. I'm probably going to offer it for sale to somebody. Maybe somebody's got a go-kart or whatever that they were on one of these 5 horsepower motors on, and they blew the motor and could use a good, I don't know, what do you call that, a short block? No, it would be a long block, right? Or whatever. This might actually still have some value to somebody. I can't get a good compression test on this with my kit because even though this screws in there, this is too tall. You can actually see the one of the valves in there when you open up, when you have this spark plug out, and I'm worried that this is going to actually hit the valve. I can't screw this in far enough to get this O-ring to seat, so I can't get a good seal. So I figure I'll just see whether or not it does anything if I squirt a little gas in here. Oh, let's see, it just wants to run out. It's gonna be kind of hard to get it to do anything really, I think. Ironically, I get a better chance of running it this way. Yeah, that motor will run. All right, that's good enough for me. At least I know there's a broken connecting rod or a hole in the piston. It'll run. I don't know how much oil it'll burn, but it'll run.